Okay, we'll get started. Good evening, and thank you for coming out tonight. I'm Mike Shepard, and I serve on your vestry as Senior Warden, and I'd like to welcome you to this fifth event in our ongoing series, Voices of Reconciliation. This series gives us an opportunity to hear and share stories that draw us closer to God and to one another. And sometimes that's hard work, because it's not always comfortable to acknowledge where and how we might struggle a bit on that path to reconciliation. But tonight's conversation promises to be a wonderful opportunity to learn, to connect, and to build community. We're so fortunate to have with us Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman from Temple Israel right here in Minneapolis. Facilitating our time with Rabbi Zimmerman this evening is our resident theologian, Dr. Andy Stewart. We'll go for about an hour this evening, leaving plenty of time for questions before our time ends. And lastly, at the end of the conversation, we hope you'll all join us here in the gallery for our reception with Rabbi Zimmerman. Okay, let's start off our evening together with a brief prayer. Whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, and blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. We pray that God may give us the spirit of wisdom and revelation so that we may know him better. In his name we pray. Amen. Now, please join me in welcoming Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman.
Well, good evening to all of you, and thank you for joining us for our latest conversation in the series, Voices of Reconciliation. Some of you have been at several of these conversations this year, and we gather mindful of our Christian imperative to listen, to understand, and to heal. And where did we get that imperative? Of course, from our Jewish forebears. We know that healing in our own lives and our communities begins when we realize that we need it, and we open ourselves up to the power of God and the Holy Spirit, the spirit of restoration and reconciliation. And this is how our own hearts are healed and strengthened, so that we can go out and help to heal our own world. So in this series, we've invited representatives of our own church as well as our broader community to share their experiences of reconciliation as we reflect on the call of our cathedral community in what seem to be increasingly fraught times. So I'm delighted to welcome Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman, whom I first met a few years ago in a Zoom during COVID, when that's the way people interacted, to share some of my work and to learn more about the work of Temple Israel. So I'm delighted we've been reunited, finally in person, after two further Zoom conversations to set up this evening. We like to have these conversations very much rooted in the particular identity, personality, and situation of our conversation partner. So we usually start with some exploration of our guests' background and biography, what brought them to the work that they're doing that makes them then an obvious person to invite for this conversation. So Rabbi Zimmerman, as I say, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
I've been a fan from afar and through the medium of Zoom, and to have this in-person conversation is a real thrill. So we'd like to begin with having you tell us a little bit about your background. Where you're from. Obviously, we'd love to learn more about how you really caught the spark of your own Jewish tradition and how that led to your current calling.
Sure. So it's a long and windy road, but lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be back to St. Mark's. We really miss you guys at the interfaith forums and senior clergy breakfasts. So hopefully we'll get to talking about what I think makes a succession possible. It's not successor, but it's the succession, which means it's the health of the community that brings the right person, not the other way around. The person doesn't make a healthy community. Sorry, just a little forbearing here. There is no Jesus today. Sorry, not sure Jesus. Well, we can talk about that too.
That's another topic.
But that's another
Yeah,
topic.
yeah.
But I think that it's just lovely to be here and to have programming where we are invited. It's not taken lightly, and it means a great deal. So my journey is that I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am one of 3 girls. I'm the youngest, and my father was a cardiologist, and my mother was for a long time a homemaker, and then tried to kind of find her spot in the world. But she raised 3 young women to be very professional and take education very seriously, and so my oldest sister is maybe the one who had a little bit more of a interesting journey, but she was a caterer in a hotel for a long time. My middle sister is a doctor, and I'm a rabbi, so we can do a bris all the way through from start to finish. So So I grew up in a home that was Reform, and in Judaism, that's a liberal arm of Judaism. And so I really grew up, I didn't have a bat mitzvah because young girls didn't have benot mitzvah ceremonies at that time. And I came to Macalester College and really began to find my Judaism in a different way, being among mostly not Jews. My high school was 70% Jewish. So I really didn't experience other things. Like I had 2 people on our block that were not Jewish. Everyone else was Jewish. So it was a really interesting growing up. But I came to Macalester, and all of a sudden people wanted to know where my horns were because I was Jewish. They were being, and I'm like, what is going on? So it made me have to talk about Judaism and explain Judaism from 101 instead of all these assumptions of having your entire world Jewish. And it made me really see that I needed to hone my skills first, but also really interesting in having a stronger identity by having to defend it on some level. My grandparents were all immigrants from the former Soviet Union. My grandfather and grandmother on my maternal side were very close to us, and he was a Yiddish teacher, a Hebrew teacher, a Talmudic scholar, and he came to this country, became a tailor. And my grandmother didn't know how to read or write, and she went back to college and worked in the cafeteria at Washington University, and she had the students teach her. So there was just a lot of interesting kinds of realities. I met a young man at the time, Frank Hornstein, whose parents were Holocaust survivors. And so being with a child of Holocaust survivors is a very interesting reality, and having my in-laws, who I got very close to. And so all of that really brought me to a journey of wanting to learn more. And what do you do to learn more is you go and you go to rabbinical school. So I decided I wanted to be a rabbi. I applied after college. I spent a year as a waitress at Dayton's in St. Paul in the River Room. I might have waited on you. I then applied to rabbinical school, got in. The first year was in Jerusalem, and then the additional 4 years were in New York. So I took an extra year for my husband then to finish his master's at Tufts University and came back. So that is my journey in being here. It just was really a journey in wanting to study was as interesting to me as the profession itself. And so the journey was as interesting as the destination.
So as you did the studies, you got a very traditional rabbinical education then, and all the aspects of Torah and Talmud and so on.
Yeah.
Did you do that always knowing that you wanted to then be a rabbi? That you really wanted to work in a congregation?
Yeah. Very interesting question, because no, I don't know if you've ever read anything by Eugene Borowitz, but if you can find anything, he's brilliant, and he became a mentor to me in many ways, and I thought, working with him and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I was a little confused about it, that I would go into the congregational rabbinate for 7 to 10 years. This is my 38th year, so you see how great plans really come to fruition. And so I was going to be here for 7 to 10 years. Then I was going to go get my PhD in psychology. And then I was going to work with clergy. So that I could be a psychoanalyst for clergy in particular after being trained and having some experience, and then I would go into perhaps private practice was really what I was thinking. But what ended up happening is that I served under 2 other senior rabbis that after 9 years, each of them, we could say crash and burn, but so I had been number 2 for both of them. And after the second one said that he was done, somebody came out of the room and said, Marcia, you better figure out what you want to do, because this is coming down fast. And I immediately said, I am done being number 2. I'm done holding it up and getting no glory. That isn't what I like. I like to be out front, if you haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. So I didn't know I was going to throw my hat in the ring. Would have been a perfect opportunity after, it really was about 8 years, maybe. No, I was there for 14 years. It was about 14 years of being there. And then I threw my hat in the ring because I sort of decided that working with my husband, talking to my husband, that was the next step, because I was worried about the congregation after all that they had been through. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and I did, and I got it, and I've been there now as the senior rabbi for 25 years.
So we'll come back a little bit later to your interest in psychology and psychoanalysis and congregations. Will. But it sounds to me, in terms of your original plan, that you've been doing a kind of clinical internship all these years to get ready for the next round. I have gone to MIPSI, which is Minneapolis Psychoanalytic Institute and Society. They have a training class for therapists to become analysts, and they accept non-therapeutic professions, and so I was I, as a rabbi, joined them. It's a 2-year study for a psychoanalytic certificate, so I received the certificate. You have to have 60 hours of supervision in addition to the class, and so I did that program, and there was a hospitalist who also wanted to go to understand family dynamics, so the 2 of us were the only ones who weren't MSWs or other degrees in psychology. Very, very cool. So as I say, we'll come back to that a bit later. So I want to stay with Judaism for a little bit longer.
Go for it. I can stay with Judaism.
So you've already touched on this a little bit. Christians are used to thinking denominationally.
You are.
And you've sort of situated the Reformed tradition in this country, and it's strongest in this country, is that right, compared to other parts of the Jewish world?
Nothing in my mind, nothing to sit on our laurels about.
Yeah.
The largest percentage are unaffiliated Jews. 50% of our population are unaffiliated. So, there's only 14 million of us in the world. If the Holocaust hadn't happened, there'd be 50 to 60 million Jews in the world. Maybe even more at this point as another generation is being born. But half of us are nothing. 33% are Reform, and then all the other ones kind of get the other whatever, 20%.
So you're kind of like the mainline Protestants in the American denominational world.
Yeah.
So what about ordaining women as rabbis? When did that happen in the Reformed tradition, and where did you fall your own career in that development?
So 1972, Sally Priesand was ordained. 1972 to 1982, there were just a few women. They weren't even women's bathrooms at HUC, but one up in the fourth floor of the library. So little Hidden Figures reminiscent. So women had to run, a mile to go to the bathroom. And there were, so 1972, the first woman was ordained. In between 1972 and 82, maybe 12 women were ordained through those entire 10 years. And or one or two or three, many of them did not go into the profession per se at all. By 1982, when I started, we were 40% of the class.
Wow.
I didn't quite understand the historic moment of that until I tried to raise money for a lectureship, a chair for women's studies at HUC. And then we did this as our promotional PR material. And I was like, oh my goodness, because there was a whole thing about you're not a woman rabbi or a female rabbi, you're a rabbi. So your gender doesn't matter. And we were like, well, when we're in our congregations as interns, they're all talking about what we're wearing and how our hair is. I think we are different. We have to talk to each other. So we started what became Women's Rabbinic Network, which is a pretty full-on organization right now. But we just met once a month, all the women from all the seminaries, because by 1982, 84 was the first woman to be ordained in the conservative movement. The Reconstructionist movement ordained women around 1974. So we tried to, there weren't enough of us really, 40% of 44 students, so we weren't talking about a lot of people. But so we all tried to meet once a month to talk about the real life things that we had to deal with. And the seminary, who were again all male teachers and administrators, were not happy with that. They thought we were segregating ourselves. So it's kind of interesting.
So that was a pretty key period, and it's more or less the same period when the Episcopal Church began to ordain women, which is, you probably know, began as kind of a rogue thing, and then the church realized this is where the Spirit's taking us, so get on with it. It completely changed the church. And your comment about 40% within just a handful of years, it's telling about the importance of women in ministry. As a former Roman Catholic, I can say that I think one of the reasons the Roman Catholic Church is so afraid of ordained women is they know what would happen. Yeah. They take over. They're better at it. So they got to hold the line. But fortunately, that's not the case in your tradition or in this one. So let's get a little serious for a moment and talk about what it's like to be an American Jew at this point in time, against the backdrop of this dramatic series of anti-Semitic incidents, ranging from cold-blooded murder in Sydney on Bondi Beach, the horrific shootings, the firebombing of a synagogue in Jackson, Mississippi, one of those legacy communities of Southern Judaism, which is such an interesting part of American history. And all this happening at the same time as members of your congregation, and of course of our congregation and others, are looking at the situation in Gaza, both sides, the hostage-taking, then the destruction of Gaza.
October 7th, which
October
had nothing
7th,
to do
exactly.
with, it had everything to do with Gaza, but not the war, before any war began.
That's right. So the hostage-taking.
It wasn't hostage takeover. It was rape. It was murder. It was horrific.
It was an attack. It was an attack with all of it.
It was an attack.
And then it became the long,
then it became the Gaza
protracted
war. Right.
pain of the
Right.
hostages
Right.
and their stories.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we've seen all that unfold, and I think for a lot of Americans who, at least in my generation, who grew up with this reflexive support of Israel, that's shaken a lot of people up. And I know it's complicated things in your community as well. Could you help us who are on the outside navigate how we can talk about Israel's war on Gaza, destruction in Gaza, things in the West Bank that we might consider to be indefensible, and not slide into the kind of easy anti-Semitic rhetoric that just seems to be rising because people don't make good distinctions.
Yes, yes. It's
not an easy one.
This is not an easy one. So I think on one level it's simple. Israel is in the market square of nations. You can critique its government without questioning its existence. So that's the easy answer, right? We don't like Putin and what's happening in the Ukraine, but we never question whether Russia should remain a country or not. We don't like its leader. We don't like what the leader is doing. So you can stay very clear in the critique of the policies and government. From my perspective, you're safe. But people seem to then move into the question of Israel's existence, and that is the question that gets kind of complicated then. Now we're in a complicated situation, right? Some people say any critique of Israel is anti-Semitism, so that's not where I stand, but some people do say that. So, but that's not where I am. So I think once we became a nation, we can't be unable to hear critique because we put ourselves into the public realm of that reality. You don't always like what you hear, but you might need to defend yourself from what you hear, and you might take the kernel of something and make it a better tomorrow. So Zionism became a dirty word after October 7th, not a dirty word to me. Zionism is the Jewish people's right to a homeland, to a place where we have been. It doesn't mean that we don't also want to share it with other people, but it is as old as the 5 books of Moses. And so we don't need anyone to tell us what and where we get to be, because that is what Jews have always been told. You can't come here, but you can go there. No, you don't get to tell us that. You can critique what we're doing as a nation, but there is returning to that place is an interesting reality. It's our history. It's where we have heard that Abraham walked, that Isaac was there, that we know the Maccabees. So even if we don't have precise explanation of ancient, the Maccabees were there. We have tells all around Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a holy place for Jews, but also for Christians and for Muslims. And my goal and vision is that we share that. But I think that it is a complicated, it moves into anti-Semitism when there's the questioning, when there's words like it's a European overtake, because there are Jews who came from Morocco, there are Jews that came from Africa, there are Jews that came from all over the world. And my grandfather, let's go back to my grandfather, Max Pasternak, grew up in Russia, saw his mother and his sister die in front of him by the Cossacks. He went to Tel Aviv. He was a Zionist. He was a Hebrew teacher. He was a Yiddish teacher. He went to what was then not Tel Aviv, but to Jaffa, and he cleaned out what today is Tel Aviv, and his entire youth group died of malaria, because when you're trying when you're there. They died of malaria. He went back to Russia, and then he came to this country because an uncle was here through Cuba, because New York was closed down in 1919, so he had to come through Cuba. So he has like so many Jewish histories just in this one person, and so he embodied so many stories within the Jewish tradition. And so, again, as part of the second Aliyah, he was escaping anti-Semitism and death. He wasn't there only because of believing that it was an important place for Jews, but he was escaping something as well. So it was not just that we all went there as kind of fun and games, it was to find survival. And that was the place to go. And you just watch Fiddler on the Roof. It's the story of my grandfather. So
that's amazing. I mean, the stories you must have told about basically on a beach in Palestine, you know, as it was British Mandate Palestine, trying to figure this out.
It was not totally beach at that point. It was a lot
sure it was not.
of water, like just lots of,
So just to sort of, you know, summarize this, always keeping in mind the distinction between the fact of Israel as an internationally recognized country, which was basically founded by UN vote. It was one of the first significant things the
after
United
World War
Nations
II,
did.
right?
After the war.
Half the
So it was
Jewish
by international law. It was something that was done. It is a fact, and therefore, why rhetoric like "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free"? This kind of language edges into that question of recognizing the legitimacy and the de facto existence of a Jewish homeland in the modern state of Israel. And so, just sharpening our thinking and our rhetorical tools, so that we don't make that mistake, or if we choose to use that rhetoric, we know what we're doing and know how that's going to be heard and what the consequences might be.
Yes, and I think that, again, opening this up, there's another congregation who brought a group of people to Bethlehem and to Palestine and never talked to a Jew while they were there. So it's like it's great. You got a narrative, and that narrative is important for us to hear and to listen to. And I hope there is land for two people. I still believe in a two-state solution, even though everybody's abandoning that idea. I don't see anywhere. What else are we going to do? So what is going to happen? And I think that there is this perspective that you can only handle one narrative, but there's two narratives. It may be more than two narratives, because within each community there are multiple narratives. And I think that you know, again, I critique Israel. I critique the Netanyahu government. I am not a fan, but I still believe that it's powerful to have one small place, have Jewish time, so that businesses are closed on Friday night and Saturday is meaningful to me, and that we have an entire country that keeps kosher for Passover is meaningful to me. I can eat at any restaurant because it all has kosher meat is meaningful to me. There's nowhere else in the world I can do that. And so the idea that there's one small place that's on Jewish time is important to me. That means something.
I'd love to talk more about that, but we probably can't
Let's keep going.
this evening.
Let's get off of it.
But you told the story of people who never meet a Jew when they go to the Holy Land, and I've met evangelical Christians who've gone and never met a Palestinian, which is very dangerous, because you don't give people these tools they need.
Every time I go, we meet with Palestinian Israelis and with Jewish Israelis and with people on the West Bank. So Palestinians on the West Bank, I take people to hear all of the stories. We never just hear one. And so it's important for everybody to hear those stories.
That's what we have to be doing, and we're just grateful to have you telling your story and the way you see the world here this evening. But now we're going to bring it a little closer to home.
Go.
So I can easily wander all over the world talking about things like this. But you've been involved for, well, more than 2 decades, even before you were senior rabbi, with this urban congregation in Minneapolis. And so you were rabbi through COVID, you were rabbi through George Floyd, the turmoil of ICE, 9/11, that's right. That would have been in the earlier period of your time there. So what does it mean for a community of faith, whether it's Temple Israel or St. Mark's Cathedral, to be in the midst of a surprisingly diverse city? People don't expect Minneapolis to be such a diverse place, but of course it is. And how has your understanding of our responsibility to the city that we live in evolved over those years, and how does your congregation at Temple Israel think about it?
So, I really believe that Jeremiah said it best when Jeremiah said, the health of this city is our health, and our health is the health of this city. We have decided to be in this city over and over and over when there is opportunity to make a different decision. And so staying in the city means that we see things in real time, in the here and now, not in what others tell us are happening in the city. So George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, a powerful experience that I believe organized us neighborhood by neighborhood in order to meet the reality of ICE when it overwhelmed and overreached in our city. And so I really believe that our city has found its way on the map. People are looking at us in many ways and constantly looking at us. And some people that I've talked to in recent days and weeks, they leave it because they don't want to be here. And I say I am very proud to be a Minneapolitan, and I'm very proud to be a Minnesotan. I think the stories we tell are really important. And so for me, the congregation, first and foremost, we take care of our members. We're here for them in birth and death and everything in between. And so for me, we work through the city inside to out, not out to in to out. So we need to take care. You need St. Mark's to take care of you when your loved one dies. You need St. Mark's to take care of you when you have a new generation born in your family. You need confirmation. We have B'nai Mitzvah. You need to help our children become adults so that they can turn this world around and not be narcissistic leaders. So, did I say that? So I think that we need to stay really focused on the inside to the out. I feel like sometimes clergy get a little distracted by the outside world, CNN coming in and, no, that is not your job. Your job is to take care of your community and out. And if CNN happens to come to your community where you can serve and talk to you, great. If they're asking you to come to them, maybe not. So you just need to make sure you're clear about your role and task as a congregation. So I think that's number one. We are commanded to take care of the world around us, but we're also commanded to take care of the world within us. And I think that is very crucial. And then I think you're ultimately asking about leadership, right? So
We're headed that way. Yeah.
Okay,
So
yeah,
go ahead.
leadership.
Go ahead. Let's
so
take us there.
it's like how to be a leader in fraught times is really an important question. And I'm hinting at it right now, but you really have to know what your role and task is. We are not lawyers for the most part, clergy. Some of us are, but very few. We really are not, we are not politicians for the most part. I live with a politician, and we are not them. We are not making policy. We are citizens, religious citizens who can have a say and make sure we do it. But we are not politicians, we are not lawmakers, unless we happen to be elected to be one. Then we are. And I really think that we have to be clear about what our role and task is and where we are to be the strongest and where our voice is authentic, rather than going out on the edge of a limb and saying things we don't really understand, but the people in our congregation do. And then we are, when somebody gets up on the pulpit and starts talking about what justice means in a courtroom and they served on a jury, talk about serving on a jury and talk about what that means, but then don't go that next step, because you're going to be talking to, the leaders in the legal world who are members of your congregation who know more than you do. And so you got to kind of pull it back. And I think that's kind of what clergy have often gotten confused about. Like, we've got this title, we get this honor, and therefore we can say whatever we want from the pulpit, even when it's outside of our expertise. Stick with what you know, and then you can be authentic. So I guess for me, that's where we as a faith community can be, right? That is really important. If it happens that your clergy member gets elected, as some people in the South, some Southern clergy, that's a normal thing, then they get to talk about it from the pulpit if they continue to be clergy in your congregation. Then they've got the authority to do so. But I give a cautionary tale to people who get distracted by the glitter out there and forget about the bread and butter of inside.
Yeah, we draw from our own wells, and the job of the clergy is to make sure that each one of us has deep spiritual wells that we can draw from, precisely to do that work of engagement.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And elected officials, if we want to go to the Capitol, need citizens to do the work of caring for the community and giving voice to what we see in the streets. So let's just even take ICE, There are a number of people who have perhaps critiqued, not really what we've done, actually. It's so interesting because as ICE came along, I'm sure you turn the corner and there is an abduction, and it's like in the streets. So people who are telling me who are living elsewhere what they understand, it's like, no, just ask me what I'm experiencing. Then you can decide what you understand. But watching the news in Palm Springs or the west coast of Florida is not really going to tell you, whatever channel you choose, it's not really going to tell you. You live here, call me, talk to me. So when people have disagreement and I see right in front of me what's happening, it's like our tech person was coming to work on Saturday, because we have bar bat mitzvah ceremonies every Saturday. He was coming to work and he saw the police officer literally pass by as ICE, not police officers, the ICE were killing Alex Preddy. He was horrified and traumatized. So don't tell me what's happening in Minnesota based on watching TV, because I'm going to tell you what's happening in Minnesota, because I'm right here.
Indeed.
So that makes it clear.
So now we're going to talk about psychoanalysis and psychology and congregations.
My favorite
So
subject.
you've You've spoken previously about your interest in group relations theory and the work of something called the Tavistock Institute, which I'd never heard of, but I've looked it up.
Well, of course
and been reading
have.
about it since you told me about it.
Of course you have.
And what was interesting about that is the way that you want to take some of those tools in that path you didn't take, at least not yet, to understand how congregations actually operate and how and why we sometimes end up in irrational, emotional, even dysfunctional behaviors, particularly as we approach transitions or threats. So, a threat can be your congregation's getting older, it's shrinking, money's tight, whatever. And transitions, obviously, when one religious leader leaves and another one comes. And you spoke of your own becoming the senior rabbi at a time of crisis of leadership and congregation. So you're well aware, as a friend of St. Mark's and an observer from not too far away, that this community is going through another leadership transition as we hire a new dean. And you've seen some of the previous transitions here, just as you've seen them in other communities of faith that you're familiar with. What advice do you have for us as we prepare to make room for a new leader? So not telling us what kind of leader we need to find.
No,
but what
I would never do that.
But what do we need to be thinking about and do as we prepare to welcome one?
So there's a great story, I'll start with a story, about a group of monks who had no new recruits and were aging. And they realized there were only a handful of them left, that they were going to die before any new recruit came. And so they had to actually grieve the end of their order. And so one monk went out to out into the woods to pray to allow him to let go of the future of this community that he worked so hard to create and to be a part of. And it's a Jewish story, so along came a rabbi, saves the day, if you don't know, spoiler, and asks the monk what is going on, why he's out here. And the monk tells him the story. And the rabbi says, oh, it's so interesting because one of you is the Messiah, and walks away. And the monk feels this renewed sense of purpose. Well, who is the Messiah, and how do we know they're the Messiah? And oh my goodness. And so goes back, and they get themselves very excited about this possibility. And we can talk about the Messiah in Judaism. It's a little different than Christianity, get it. But, and to the point where now there were new recruits who were so interested in figuring out how to be close to someone who might be the Messiah. And it continued to survive and live past the group who were going to age and die. So that, for me, is the story of a community. You have to feel worthy. You are the ones who need to work together to find out who the Messiah is among you. Because the new clergy person, I promise you, will not be. I promise you. And if you want them to be, they will fail to be. So what is the unconscious reality of St. Mark's? What is the unconscious understanding of self? Is it about the Episcopal Church, or is it about this church? Is it about what is important to you in what it means to be in the place and time that you are, the here and now? Or is it carrying the burden of the past? Is it what and how you treat each other as a community? And yes, a good leader helps the community do that. So let me give you 2 examples of what I mean. A leader cannot be a leader unless the community is with them, right? As Rabbi Shapiro, my predecessor, Max Shapiro, who was the senior rabbi of Temple Israel, the longest till I came along. Sorry, Max, I outdid you. He would always say, don't walk in front of me, I may not follow. Don't walk behind me, I might not lead. Walk beside me. So the question to me, for any of us in any community, and it isn't just the community, it's the leader too, but I went to Tavistock to the Leicester 2-week conference. So this is group relations. It's taking psychoanalytic theory and it is applying it to groups. So you live in the unconscious of a group for 2 weeks. It is a very scary reality, right? Because consciously we might think ourselves one way, unconsciously we might act another. All right? So I did one outside of London in a town for 2 weeks. They end up putting you into a group that's like your family, a group of about 7, and you meet every morning with them. Then you come back with the whole group that like are 50, and you work through issues with them. Then you move into what it means to become authority, how individuals respond to authority, when the group defines the individual, when the individual takes on the group dynamic, right, and fills a role. The group will put out many feelers for who's going to fill this role for us, of being the other, of being the Messiah, of being whatever. And then it goes out and it sticks on a particular person because of their own history and their own knowledge. That's psychoanalytic theory. It's fascinating. But what I want to talk about as far as leadership is, here I am a leader, right? After COVID, the staff at Temple were in an uproar for a variety of reasons. You know, they didn't want to come back, they didn't, whatever, and I didn't understand what was happening. So I did this group relations to understand how the staff was reacting to leadership or to authority, because they were bucking it. Everybody was feeling it after what I found out is everyone was feeling it after COVID, because everyone got used to being at home and they wanted to stay at home. And so work became a different definition. But when you're dealing with people and you're serving people, you need people to show up. But they didn't want to show up. Okay? So I was like, what is going on here? So I went to this Tavistock and they put you in these pressurized situations. You've got to get into groups, you have this amount of time, you have this many rooms, they put you in a pressure and you have to do it now, okay? And then they leave, the leaders leave. And then the whole group becomes chaotic, becomes chaos, right? Because there's no leader in the room. So the first time at Tavistock, after a week, we did this once and it was chaos, it was horrible. It was the most international community I've ever been a part of. People were from Africa, from India, from Russia, from the Ukraine, it was an unbelievable experience. And the second time I was like, okay, I'm not going to live through that chaos. I can't stand it. So I get up and I start controlling like I do every day at home, right? So I did it and everybody was with me and it was great and it worked and we did something wrong and the leadership got mad at, whatever. It was like a whole thing. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I controlled chaos. You really should not blame me for anything. So I was like flying high. And a good friend from India turned to me and he said, you know, Marcy, the only reason you were successful is because we followed you. But we're not going to follow you next time, so don't try again. Wise words that I didn't listen to. So that ended, and it was a very powerful experience. Fast forward, I went to another group relations conference in Massachusetts, very different reality. And I tried it again, and no one followed me. No one followed me. Actually, they fought me to the point, it was right after the first Trump inauguration. It was in March. Not first, the second. This time. It was in March. And the biggest group was chaos. They created chaos. The whole group created chaos and tried to infuse the system with chaos. They lied. They cheated. They were horrific human beings. They were surprised at themselves. Deep down, they're not. They decided I was Israel. I had an Israeli flag on my head. No one talked to me. They literally walked past me. My friend, who was in my small group, who was Muslim, had a Palestinian flag. We got along. They actually treated us horrifically. That's the unconscious. That's the unconscious at work. And so you see that as leaders, you need to make sure your community is with you. So the search committee will figure out who. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about them. Don't worry about the who. Worry about you. How are you going to make yourself stronger? How are you going to make yourself feel like a community that deserves someone? And maybe the Messiah is here already. So let's figure out who it is, because we sure need it.
Just please promise us that you will befriend and support our new dean.
Always, always.
Because I'm sure it'll be a challenge. We have a few minutes now to take your comments and questions before we adjourn for the evening. And Mary has the microphone. So please feel free just to put up your hand and Mary will find you. And here we go.
Hi, Rabbi. I'm so proud of you for being one of the first female ordained. Many of us at St. Mark's come from a variety of traditions. And there's the rise of the nuns, which I'm sure you're aware of, where you check your religion on the survey and it's none of the above. And the rising generation, we've lost so many from many traditions. What's happening in the Jewish community, and what can communities do to help encourage perpetuation of, bring those youngsters into the monastery, as it were?
So I just want to make sure I'm hearing the question right, that I answer it well. You're wondering how to get more people into ministry itself or into religion overall?
The younger rising generation, our 20 and 30-year-olds who aren't coming.
Yeah, yeah.
They've abandoned religion.
Is that, do I understand that?
So
Right.
it's getting the young people to understand what this is and get them to connect and
Right.
remain with it and inquire and join us. Yeah.
Yes. So, you know, I remember talking to my older daughter, who is a rabbi, and my younger son is now applying to rabbinical school after 5 years in the stand-up comedy world in New York. So,
That's good practice.
so at least, yeah. I'm like, what profession gives you a microphone from day one, Max Hornstein? There you go. So I remember telling her I was worried about the next generation, and she said, Mom, we believe Judaism should exist. It's just going to look like something you've never seen before. And I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And we, and so in some ways, we have to let go of what is, because they're not into perpetuating what is. We're in my view, a exponentially transitional moment, post-industrial. Somebody just told me tariffs are great because it will bring manufacturing back to this country, and I'm like, if you're getting rid of the immigrants, so who's going to do that? Are you telling your children they should be manufacturers? No, I don't think so. So I think that we're industrial, we're going into a virtual reality, AI, we don't know where, this is like the beginning of it. It's like 100 years, 200 years, we're gonna look back and we're gonna say, okay, now we kind of see what we're doing now. Now we understand, just like we did in the Industrial Revolution, it took hundreds of years for us to figure out what was actually happening. There's, so polarization happens at these major moments, but the reality today is not going to be the reality tomorrow. And for those of us who are, let's use the word immigrants to this virtual world, we are not native speakers, we really cannot do it for them. We have the wisdom, we have a lot to give that we need to hold on to and give to them because they move too fast, too quickly, all of that. But it's going to be a world we will not ever imagine. And we have to accept that. And we have to allow that to happen. And not feel belittled by it, not feel that there's a scarcity model, that somehow if they understand, then it's less about, we're bad if they're good, right? That's a psychoanalytic theory, that we're all whole people, we're all good and bad inside of us, right? And that we don't have to give the bad part of ourselves the head of the table. We don't have to have them control everything, but we do have to bring them along and say, it's okay to feel shame, it's okay to feel guilt, it's okay to feel hate and love, it's okay, let's just keep going, let's just keep moving along, it's all right, you can feel really bad about yourself, it's all right, but we need to let go. And that's what's really hard. So we can't say, look at what we've got, you've got to accept this, because they're not going to. And we've raised them to be self-thinkers. We just didn't know they were going to self-think themselves out of our reality, right? We didn't like them disagreeing with us. We thought we were just going to create prototypes of us. But this world doesn't need us in the same way anymore. We need to change. We're important, we're human beings, but it doesn't need our know-how in the same way. And we got to let go of it and accept it and know there's an abundance of things. We give something, but we're no longer at the center, and that's okay. And the more we put ourselves in the center, the more we're going to be rejected, rather than turn to for our wisdom. I think that's what I think.
That's, I think, a pretty great way to end. It reminds me of that great line attributed to Pope John the 23rd, who threw all the doors open in the Catholic Church and then died to leave it to everybody else to figure out what to do with it. But he once said that his prayer at the end of the day was, "It's your church, Lord, I'm going to bed."
Yeah.
Right? And I just love that there's only so much we can do. And
so much we can do.
And then after we're gone, if we believe the project has something to it,
yes,
it will continue.
It will continue. I believe it. I've always said it as a feminist, feminist theory asked really hard questions of Judaism, and Judaism heard it and responded. And for a long time, it was, you're not a woman, you're a rabbi. That's not the answer I wanted to hear, so we made it different. I am a woman, I am a rabbi, and I feel very strongly about that. That's what I bring to the pulpit, it's what I bring to my community. And gender is a complicated thing that has changed over time, but I want to just say that it really is strong enough to take the questions. And if we act like it doesn't, then we're telling our next generation that it's fragile. Nobody wants a religious tradition that's fragile. They want something strong.
Indeed. Well, please join me in thanking our guest, Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman. And you're all invited to join Rabbi Zimmerman at a reception next door in the gallery. with the current exhibition of photographs taken at Auschwitz by Chris Faust under the title "Work Makes Free," from the infamous motto on the gate of the camp. Rabbi Zimmerman, would you bless us before we close?
Sure. I never stand behind a pulpit, actually, because for me, it's being here and close that allows me to think and for a spiritual presence to be inside me. I just want to offer you this prayer that is said in churches, in indigenous native traditions, and comes from the book of Numbers, actually. So in Hebrew and in English, Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, may God bless you and may God keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechuneka, may God's light shine upon you, and may God be gracious unto you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, may God's light be upon you, and may God grant you the most precious gifts, the gifts of wholeness, the gifts of peace. May it be God's will. Amen.